Oh my, have I gone live? Am I live? Let's see. Did it work? I think we're live. Hi guys. Hi everyone. Hold on one second. Let me get my screen together. All right. Hi everybody. Again, we've had so many technical difficulties all day today. So I apologize if you were just in the live and I got kicked out some kind of way. So I apologize for that, but we're back. So again, really quickly, I'm Valerie Hawes, the Organizational Learning and Development Lead here at Goodwill Columbus, and welcome back to our Facebook page. And today I'm going to be talking to you about preparing for an interview, okay? Now, again, as I was stating earlier, we've offered this class several times last week, and already today we've repeated ourselves with the Indeed Career Search workshop as well as the Indeed Resume Builder. For the rest of the week, we're going to take portions of that, of those three presentations and sort of go in depth on different sections of the presentation so that we can just concentrate on some areas that most people maybe they take for granted or they don't realize just how important it is to get some of the key points, okay? So that's what we'll be doing for the rest of the week. Please just check our calendar on this Facebook page and tune in when you're interested. Now, I don't know, I don't have a moderator tonight, so I'm going to ask that if you don't mind, if you have questions, please feel free to leave your information or your question in the chat, or you can just send us a message either to our email address at wfd@gwcols.com, which is located in the description box or the information box here on our page, or you can just leave a message in the message box here on the page and we'll get back to you as soon as possible, okay? Now with that said, let's get started and let's talk about preparing for an interview, okay? But first, let me share my screen here. Let me pull up the presentation, share. There we go, and it should pop up in a second here. Come on, there we go. So with that said, again, this is preparing for an interview. Again, we welcome you to this class, and I'm just gonna ask that you make sure that you're courteous and kind and respectful to others participating in the course. Any content that does not follow these guidelines will result in you being removed from the chat and blocked moving forward. So please be respectful. All right, so let's get started. One of the first questions, or there are all kinds of questions that are asked in an interview, and some of them are pretty standard. For instance, what are your strengths? Or what are your weaknesses? Or why did you choose this career path? What are your long-term goals? Now, all of those, and sometimes those questions sort of stump people, but nothing seems to stump people more than this question. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Now, what I find odd about the fact that this stumps you is that this should be the easiest question to answer. There's some obvious answers that an interviewer is looking for when they're asking you these questions, and we'll go over those details, but I always say you want to start strong and end strong in an interview. And this question is typically the first question asked. So you'll want to be prepared to answer all of these questions and more. And we'll give you a whole list of questions to be mindful of in the interview. But really pay close attention to this question. Tell me about yourself. We'll talk more about why and what makes this question so important in just a second. Now, let's start off though by getting a better understanding as to what are the reasons for an interview in the first place, okay? Well, first of all, is to find out if you can do the job. So they're going to ask you questions to determine your knowledge and your experience. They may even have you take an online test or do some sort of demonstration. For instance, when I say demonstration, I'm a trainer. So whenever I've applied for a training job, I've had to at least demonstrate that I'm, fully aware of what it takes to command the attention of a room, that I understand the concepts associated with adult learning, and that I can actually facilitate. So I would have to demonstrate that. Other ways to demonstrate your knowledge is through a test, or obviously by just asking the right questions. So that's one of the reasons for an interview. Another reason is to find out if you will fit in and how well do you communicate. Everyone's always trying to figure out if you will be a good fit for the team. And every organization has what's called a work culture. Every organization has its own culture. Different fields have their particular work culture. And so they're always looking to see if your level of interest, your personality types, and your way of communicating fits in with the culture. Now, they'll do that by asking you very specific questions. There are two different types of questions in particular they ask, or different types of questions: behavioral or situational questions. We'll talk in detail about what those are. And through asking you to describe yourself, they're listening to see how well do you communicate. Your style of communication, the language that you use, is going to be very telling. And when you are in an interview, you want to make sure that you have already done some research and some preparation before you walk into that room. And one of the things you'll want to do for sure is you'll want to pay attention to the job posting. And on that job posting, you'll want to pay attention to the language that's used, the jargon that's used, and you'll want to demonstrate your use of that same jargon and those keywords that are illustrated in that job posting. By demonstrating that style of communication and that language, it says that you are adaptable and flexible. And both of those things are great characteristics to demonstrate in the interview. So that's what they're looking for. Also, they want to find out if you really want the job. So they're going to ask questions. They want to find out if you want the job, and they'll be able to tell that based upon what questions you ask them. So they'll want to ask you at the end of the interview, they'll say, hey, do you have any questions for us? Whatever you do, please never say, oh no, I'm good. No, you're never good. Even if you know the answers to these questions, you'll still want to prepare a list. You'll want to have some questions maybe about availability or the shift preference, or you'll want to find out what's the preferred work environment like? What are some of the long-term goals that they have for a person in this role? What are your long-term goals? If you demonstrate those things, that's going to tell them that you have done the research, you are interested in what they have to offer, and it lets them know that you really want to work there, okay? So those are some things to be conscious of in the interview. Always prepare questions on the front end. Now, I mentioned the fact that it's important to do research, and you'll do this research online through the internet. You can Google the company, you can go out to the company website. I also suggest going out to Glassdoor.com. That'll give you an understanding too of what others are saying about the company, people who have worked there before. You'll get good and bad. if you look out there, but you'll also want to go out to the website and really get an understanding for who are the leaders in this organization. What is their business? What do they do exactly? What are some milestones? What are some things that they've accomplished? Those things will be key, because another question that is commonly asked in the interview is, so what do you know about us? That again demonstrates your level of interest. Again, I mentioned earlier about the job posting or the announcement. You'll want to make sure you're reading that thoroughly. Again, pay attention to the keywords, the technical words used, and you'll want to pay very close attention to the mission statement. Now, the keywords and the technical words, as I mentioned before, it's great to use those words in the interview. It demonstrates that you're adaptable, that you are a good fit for the organization. I also suggest that when you are tailoring your resume, you'll want to use those same keywords or technical words in the resume too. So you'll want to tweak your resume to ensure that you've incorporated them. Another thing to be mindful of is the fact that on the job posting, the first 3 bullet points illustrated on the job posting typically are what the company views as the most important responsibilities on the job. Now, that's not to say that all of the bullets aren't important, they are, but they have prioritized these top 3 bullet points. So you'll want to emphasize your experience as it relates to those top 3 bullet points too. Keep that in mind. You'll want to reference that in the interview, and you'll want to rehearse those phrases and those keywords and that language prior to coming into the interview, okay? So also make sure you go out to our landing site. It's the Goodwill Indeed landing site, and that can be found at www.indeed.com/partner/Goodwill. You'll be able to find some of this information and more as you are preparing for your interview. Now let's talk about the 2 different types of interviews that may take place. Now, with the current health crisis that we're facing right now, very few companies are working as they always have. Most people that are working right now, unless they're an essential worker, they are working remotely. So if they're doing business remotely. And if they're interviewing right now, they're doing those interviews remotely. And they're probably going to start off, which is typical, with a phone interview, and or may graduate to another phone interview or onto either a Skype, Zoom, or FaceTime, some sort of digital interview. So let's talk about the phone interview and some things to be mindful of as you prepare for a phone interview. The first thing you'll want to do is stand up if you can. Now, the reason why we suggest standing up is because, one, you tend to be more focused, you are more focused, more professional, and very conscious of what it is that you're doing. You also will want to look in the mirror if you can. And the reason for that is because when you can see your face, you may be surprised as to maybe what your attitude may sound like over the phone. Now, the reason why I say that is because sometimes we don't know how we sound to others. The tone in which we're speaking may not be apparent, but it may show on our face. But obviously, we can't see our face unless we have a mirror. So if you're standing in front of a mirror, you will be able to notice whether or not you look angry or you look sad or uninterested. But if I'm looking at my face and I look uninterested, I probably sound that way. So That will make you more conscious of your demeanor, and it will probably change what you sound like over the phone. For that same reason, you'll want to smile. When I worked in customer service in the past, I remember in particular working for a hotel, and I worked at the front desk. I didn't work on the phones per se, but we were always told to answer the phone with a smile. And it's true. When you are smiling, you sound differently over the phone. So you'll want to smile when you're on the phone, because again, remember, you're giving your best impression, your best first impression, and you only get one chance to do that. So you'll want to make sure you come across positive, you are sounding positive, you sound focused, and that's why you want to stand, look in the mirror, and make sure you smile. You also, for that reason, you don't want to smoke, chew gum, eat, or drink. That's right. On the phones, don't smoke, chew gum, eat, or drink. Now, for obvious reasons, you don't want to be smoking and chewing gum, or eating, but be careful about drinking. Now, it's okay to have a glass of water or a bottle of water. I have a cup of water right here next to me right now. But that's just in case, my mouth gets dry and I want to wet my whistle. You can do that, but you don't want to sit there with a cup and a straw and just sucking on a Slurpee while you're on an interview, okay? Make a conscious effort to keep your drink, keep your snacks, everything away, focus on the call, and just have something to drink there available to you, all right? Also make sure that you are speaking slowly and that you are enunciating clearly. And as I mentioned, you keep that glass of water nearby, but don't just sit there sucking on it all the entire interview. Now, let's talk about the Skype, Zoom, or FaceTime interviews. When having a FaceTime interview, you'll want to make sure that you position yourself from the chest up and, well, actually either chest up and about either waist up or chest up. And when we say chest up, approximately like what would be considered equivalent to like 3 buttons down. So pretty much about, I would say about where I am with you right now, okay? You'll want to do that. You'll want to make sure that you focus on the webcam. Sometimes when we're set up in our offices, sometimes people work from dual monitors. And if that were the case right now, you might be more inclined to look at the monitor because that's where you see the person that you are actually interviewing with, correct? But it wouldn't make sense to look over here and talk to a monitor when the camera is straight ahead. So you'll want to make sure that you are focused on the webcam and not somewhere off to the side, okay? Also, before the interview starts, you'll want to test your microphone, your lighting, and ensure you have a clean background, okay? If you're in an open setting, kind of like this background I have going on here, you'll want to make sure it's tidied up back there. But a lot of times it's probably best for an interview to have your interview up against a clear white wall, some sort of clean space. You don't want to clash what you're wearing with what's against the wall. You don't want there to be any distractions behind you. You want them to focus on you and you on them. And then another thing to consider is to dress up like you would if you were in an in-person interview. Sometimes, again, we tend to act a lot like how we're dressed. So if you have on sweats, you may take the interview a bit too casually. You'll want to focus on being a professional and giving your best professional first impression. And the best way to get into character is to dress in character. So be sure to make sure at least from the waist up that you are as professional as possible. And from the waist down, it's probably best to dress up as well. But if not, be comfortable, but stay away from the sweats and yeah, you don't want to have on shorts or anything, because God forbid you have to stand up and walk off and grab something and they get a glimpse of this mismatched outfit that you have on, okay? And again, last but not least, certainly not least, you'll want to make sure you're smiling, because again, you want to be positive and you want to send positive vibes through that webcam, okay? Now let's talk about the different types of questions again. There are some skill-based questions, behavioral questions, and situational questions. Now, let me tell you what these different types of questions do. The skill-based questions are related to experience with technology, your industry knowledge, or your practical knowledge of what you know and what you've done in the past. Whereas the behavioral questions are more prone to test your aptitude, to test your problem-solving skills and your soft skills. And when we say your soft skills, we're talking about your communication skills, how well you work with other people, things of that nature, as well as the situational questions. These are going to be questions that are sort of formatted to present scenarios where they will see, based on this scenario, how would you respond if you were in this situation? Or tell me a time when you had to deal with difficult customers. Or tell me about the time when you were already overwhelmed with duties and your boss came to you and asked you to do something in addition. How would you communicate that with your supervisor? So they'll ask you very specific questions. Now, most times they're not asking you to tell them how you would respond. Typically, they want to know what you have done. Remember earlier I said part of the reason for the interview is to see how you can demonstrate that you know what you say you know, or you've done what you say you've done. They'll want very specifics. Now, I always suggest that if you don't know how to answer certain questions, then go out and you can actually Google some appropriate answers to some very difficult behavioral or situational type questions. And then based upon the phrasing that you see used there, you can change your language to mimic that type of style. However, never lie, never make up something that has not happened. If it hasn't happened, be honest, but don't lie and don't make something up. Be honest about it and ask them, could you answer this in a way that would suggest what you would do in that particular situation? So for more details on these types of questions and more, feel free again to go out to our Goodwill Indeed landing site, and you can find that at indeed.com/partner/Goodwill. Now, here is one of the most important things to remember about an interview. Everyone should practice for the interview. You should practice. You need to prepare research, and part of your research and preparation includes practice. Now, on this slide here, you see the top 10 most asked questions. These are the most typically asked questions in an interview. And I don't care who the interviewer is and what the field is that you're going into. Every interviewer is going to ask these 10 questions. So this is your cheat sheet. What you'll want to do is, when you have time, if you're going to use this video, you'll want to pause it here or come back and freeze it on this slide and jot down all of these questions. Tell me about yourself and your work experience. What are your weaknesses? Why should we hire you? Why do you want to work here? What are your goals? Why did you leave your last job, or why are you leaving your job? When were you most satisfied in your job? What can you do for us that other candidates can't? What are 3 positive things your last boss would say about you? And what are your strengths? These are the typically asked questions. So what I always suggest is that you write down these questions and then you write out your answers. You can Google these answers and look to see how others who have been asked these questions on interviews, those that are applying for the same type of role you're applying for, how did they answer them? And then again, you'll want to reshift or reformat those answers so that they are in alignment with your actual experience, okay? Again, I can't stress this enough. Never lie, never make anything up. Answer them as best as possible, okay? And once you've done that and you've written them out in complete sentences, you'll want to rehearse them, read them aloud, read them to someone else. That is also going to be your best way of checking to make sure not only does it sound appropriate, but is it the best possible answer, okay? Now, answering tough interview questions, because there will be tough interview questions, and those are those situational or behavioral questions. In this case, you'll want to use what we consider the CAR technique. This is when you answer these questions with the context, action, and result in mind. Whenever you're asked a situational or behavioral question, you want to start off with the context. What was the situation or issue? Okay, so if they ask you, tell me about this time when you had to deal with a difficult customer and how did you handle it? They want to know what was the situation. Describe what happened in that situation. Then follow it up with the action. In other words, what action did you take to address the situation? Next, you'll be asked to come up with the result. In other words, how was the situation resolved? And when we say resolved, we mean in a positive manner, okay? In a very positive manner. So you'll want to answer these questions by starting with the context, the action, and the result. Again, be honest, always truthful. Another really tough question that really gets people really worked up is answering a question regarding a criminal record. Now, if you have a criminal record in your background, if you're asked about it in the interview, you should always be honest, but there is a way to answer it, okay? We say to answer that type of question with what we call the 3 R's. And that would be starting with discussing your responsibility in the issue, regret, and redemption. So when we say responsibility, take responsibility for what you did. Don't place blame on someone else. Don't ask someone else or try to say, well, it wasn't me, or I got framed, or none of that. Always take full responsibility for your actions, then express your regret or your remorse for taking those actions, followed by redemption. And when we say redemption, this is when you talk about the positive changes you've made and continue to make to ensure that you don't fall back into that same scenario. Now, when we say redemption too, some of the things you may have done may have been taking a class, becoming a part of a program, getting a certification of some sort, or mentoring others to ensure that they don't make the same mistakes you do, okay? You'll want to make sure you answer with the 3 R's, and again, do not lie. 9 times out of 10, if someone is asking you about your criminal record in the interview, they probably already know. You should answer it as if they already know. So tell the truth. I also want to say this. If you have something in your background, that is not a definite thing that's going to keep you away from gainful employment. There are companies, many companies that will hire you with something in your background. So don't let that be the reason why you don't pursue gainful employment. It can happen. It may take a little longer. It may be a little harder, but it can be done. So again, these are those tough questions. For all the questions in the interview, be yourself, always answer honestly. And if you need more information about these questions and more, again, go out to the landing site, again, at indeed.com/partner/Goodwill. And then also, I want to let you know that there are some questions in the interview that are illegal to ask. And if an interview is asking you these questions, it's likely that they don't know that they can't ask. Okay, so be patient with them. And sometimes the interviewers are just as nervous as you are. So, and if they're inexperienced, they may make the mistake of asking these questions. In the event that they do, you'll want to contact the EEOC, because these types of questions, or questions that sound like they are trying to get these types of answers out of you, are illegal to ask. Anything that's pertaining to your race, color, or national origin, religion, sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation, pregnancy status, disability, age or genetic information, citizenship, marital status, or the number of children that you have. Again, please contact the EEOC if you are asked any of these questions. And last but not least, we need you to go out and take our survey, our feedback form. This is our way of finding out what it is that we can offer, or to make sure that we're sharing all of the information that you need so that we can continue to do so effectively and help you along your path to employment. So please, when you get a chance, please come back to this screen and fill out our survey, all right, online. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. Let me stop my screen share. Hopefully I didn't keep you too long. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties on the front end, but I'm so glad that you decided to come and check us out this evening. In the future, please stop back by our page. We'll be back starting out our day for early 9 a.m. check-in. We'll just say hi and let you know what's going on for the day. And then we'll have a 10 o'clock, a 2 p.m. and a 6 p.m. class tomorrow. And just come on back and check us out. Next week, we're going to have some new classes as well. Again, my name is Valerie Hawes. I'm the Organizational Learning and Development Lead at Goodwill Columbus. And I just want to thank you. And I wish you a great evening. Thanks, guys. Bye.